Hello and welcome to another Through the Leadership Lens, a podcast presented by Women in Propane. I am Freddie Riddler.
And I'm Bridget Kidd. And in this episode, we will hear from Jennifer Jarboe, who is Senior Vice President of Human Resources at ThompsonGas. And we're going to be talking about what it means to be a leader. And we're super excited to hear from your perspective about your career in the industry, what you think about leadership, how you apply leadership, and maybe a little bit about those people who have influenced you.
Great.
But before we get started, let's take a quick second for our sponsorship, Irish Propane.
Through the Leadership Lens is sponsored by Irish Propane Corporation, serving Western and Central New York. For all your residential and commercial propane needs, choose Irish Propane. Irish Propane is a locally operated, New York State certified, woman-owned business. For more information, visit irishpropane.com. Irish Propane delivers peace of mind.
You can go ahead, Bridget.
Yeah, great. So, Jennifer, if you would talk to us for a little bit, I think now is a time where sometimes leadership is a bit of a buzzword, right? And there's a lot of focus on leadership and what it means. But maybe you could give us a little bit of a perspective of what does leadership mean to you? And if you could weave in there a little bit about how you got where you are in your career, that would be a great
absolutely.
place for us to start.
Like you said, leadership, I think, is kind of a buzzword right now. And I look at leadership I don't think you have to be a people leader to be someone that can define leadership at your organization. And that's something that I think we're really trying to cascade down here at ThompsonGas is you're a leader in every role that you're in, and you have the opportunity to influence and lead folks, right? So, I think for me, first and foremost, it means to be a catalyst for others to kind of see and reach their full potential, by supporting them, by giving them opportunities to stretch themselves, to recognize their strengths, to try to kind of put people in the right place at the right time. That's something that I've been really, really passionate about throughout my career, is really just kind of identifying talent and helping them see what I see in them and giving them the opportunities to kind of stretch and develop, which is really important. And again, I think anyone can do that from any seat in a company. And I also think leadership is really about creating a safe place for folks to be comfortable to make mistakes, and to encourage them to think outside of the status quo, right? So I think all too often organizations, kind of breed this kind of fear of failure or fear of making a mistake. And I think as leaders, it's really important for us to make employees aware that it's a safe space, that they can stumble, that they can try new things, that they can push a new process or think outside the box on a new initiative. And if that doesn't work, it's okay. We need to encourage them to keep trying that and making sure that they know they're safe to try these things and kind of push the envelope, if that makes sense. So I think that's really, really important.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think the biggest thing for me that kind of defines leadership is just trust on both sides of the desk, right? So I need to trust the folks around me, and as a leader, I need to work really, really hard to earn the trust of the folks that I'm partnering with on a daily basis, right? And so that means being humble, being comfortable to admit when I'm wrong or when I've made a mistake, asking for help, asking for feedback. And I think when individuals see leaders at a company doing that, they recognize that it's okay for them to do that, and it makes us all better, right? So I think those are kind of the pillars for me when I look at leadership and what we try to push down in the organization here. So I've had the opportunity to work with some great leaders in my life. I kind of came up untraditionally in human resources. I was a recruiter. I was really a salesperson kind of when I started in this business, and moved over from kind of the agency side to the corporate side to run a talent team for a publicly traded company. And my CHRO there was an incredible mentor to me. And he approached me a few years in and asked me if I would run all of HR for him. And I had no experience running HR. And I said, I don't think I know what I'm doing. I don't think I can do that. And he said, and these are just words that have stuck with me. He said, I trust you. I trust that you'll make the right decisions for our employees and for this company, that you'll lead fairly and you'll help develop people. The rest you can learn. So, it really, really stuck with me. And he's right. You know what? what I didn't know about something in HR, I Googled, or I had a really strong team of folks around me that I worked to develop. And, he gave me the opportunity to kind of move into this corporate HR world, and the rest is history, right? And now I know a lot, but I certainly didn't then. But I had someone that trusted me and knew that I could learn it, right? So that's been something that's really pushed me through, and something that I always really try to pass along to folks as I'm kind of moving up in my career. So yeah.
That's great. And I wrote down trust and opportunity. I like how those two words kind of coexist with each other for leadership. I mean, you have to have the opportunity, first of all, to be a leader, but you also have to have somebody to trust that you can do it. And that's a great story about how you had somebody kind of mentor you, and then you were kind of that leader for the HR. So, speaking about leadership and the story you just kind of talked about, how has leadership style changed? Because prior to COVID, you were there with your team. You could see them every day. You were working with them every day. You were involved every day physically. Now it's a lot of remote. So how has it changed from, pre-COVID to now?
I think it goes back to that trust word again, right? I think leaders that maybe prior had a little bit more kind of close control, for lack of a better word, over the team that was there, I think had to really, really quickly recognize that they had to trust that folks were going to get done what needed to get done without that kind of close in-person management, right? So I've actually seen, even as we've started to kind of come back into the office in a hybrid mode, that just that kind of leadership style, I think, has changed across the board in how we're managing folks now. And I think there's a lot less need for kind of control. I see a lot more delegation, a lot more trust, and just kind of cohesive connection in that regard, right? Knowing like they were getting that done when they were in their family room with their kids at home and their dogs barking. There's zero reason that they can't get it done now, right? So I think it's just kind of a mutual respect, I think, has grown kind of from a leadership perspective. And I think folks are realizing that we just need to kind of give folks the space to be able to get done what they need to get done in the way that they can get it done and the time that they get it done, and just trust that it will get done, right? And it's less about doing it in the traditional way. So,
yeah. I think one of the things that I always think about with leadership and like these changing styles of leadership and work environment, whatever, and leadership could be in your community or in your relationships, your family, whatever it might be. I always think there's an element of risk involved, right? Because like you're saying, you're trusting people, and especially in this environment, I have to trust you and you have to trust me that I'm going to be there when you need it, but I'm also going to let you get done what you need to get done. I mean, has there been a time, and I think, oftentimes, at least from my perspective and in my universe, like women, it's a little bit more difficult, right? To take those risks and take that leap of faith, and maybe in this industry more than others. Do you have any times where you've either coached someone through that and really gotten them to take that leap of faith? Certainly you did, taking the role in running HR. But is there any of those experiences you think you could share with us to maybe help guide somebody else who might be questioning that leap of faith?
I think it's an interesting question, in this time, but also I think particularly in the propane industry, right? So I'm only 2 years into the propane industry, and I think kind of what I've seen is that there's kind of traditionally been more of kind of like a rule by the fist maybe type of management versus leadership, if that makes sense. And so that's been a big focus for me, and just coming in and saying like, we can do this differently, guys, right? Like, and this may be how you were kind of brought up in the industry, but the landscape is changing, and what employees are looking for and asking for is very different now, right? So I mean, specifically, we've actually in the last year created a leadership development program for ThompsonGas that focuses exactly on that. And we're really asking our leaders to look at their teams differently and to tackle their day-to-day differently. And it's about personal connection and development conversations and supportive and trusting relationships more than it's about, this is your task for the day. This is what you didn't accomplish. Let's talk about that, right? So we're really trying to lean more towards like a strengths-based performance structure versus focusing on, weaknesses or what's not gotten done. And again, opening that kind of trusting and vulnerable relationship so that we can get ahead of issues, right? our goal is to work through it. And so it's been a leap of faith for a lot of our managers that have grown up in an industry that I don't think has traditionally been like that. And I think everyone in general is kind of taking that leap of faith right now, because employees are absolutely asking for something different, and they're leaving jobs that aren't giving it to them, right? So they really want those relationships with their managers, that kind of personal, kind of human connection, I think is really important. So so it's been a real shift, but we're seeing tremendous success with the way that we're trying to tackle it now. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's a woman I follow on Instagram who is, I have young children. And so I do see a lot of parallels with, raising kids and being a leader and a manager. And one of her big things is like, say yes when you can, right? When it doesn't violate your family values, and it doesn't, nobody's going to be at risk of getting hurt, the Holy Grail. Just try and say yes. So that's something we've been trying to do. If an employee, your job is X, Y, and Z, but you're really interested in kind of pursuing something else, we're really trying to say, okay, do it. Really dig in and see. You're still accountable for your job and the productivity of that job. But if it allows you to get something else out of what you're doing, let's try and embrace that, rather than,
this is your box.
this is the box of your job.
Yeah. And I like that you brought that up about saying yes. And one of the things that I like to hear is, when you do say yes, you always look to say, who can I bring up with me? Like, I'll take on this project, this role, this leadership responsibility, but yet have it inside of you to say, but I'm not going to do this alone. I know that I can get there at the end of the line, but I'd rather take this entire team with me, because it's just going to make more sense to have more opinions, more skills involved. So Jennifer, with that being said, I we brought you on this because of leadership. Tell us the balance between leadership at work, because it's kind of funneling into this, and leadership in your community. Because Bridget made a good point, because when people think of leadership skills, they always think it's tied to your job, and it's kind of fun to hear people what they do in the community. It might not be considered a leadership role in the community, but you're still making a difference. You're still impacting people, and you're doing it with a team. Do you find anything you're doing outside of work that you would consider yourself as a leader?
I think I've always just kind of naturally been kind of someone that has been comfortable giving advice and kind of being an open door for folks that might be kind of struggling in certain areas. Obviously, I think that's kind of, it started with the fact that I was in recruiting and HR. And so a lot of people would come to me about, career struggles, or, trying to decide a path, or making a move in something, or interviewing, or, is this the right time for me to change jobs? And so I've always been really kind of comfortable to try to be empathetic to listen to folks and kind of the challenges that they're going through. I think I've also kind of naturally been the person. So I have older children, but I was also kind of an individual that all my kids' friends came to for that advice as well. So I really think that I really try to just kind of lead folks to be comfortable enough to trust their gut and to make the decisions that they feel are right. And I just try to kind of be an open door and as empathetic as I can to kind of support that. So I think that's really important. I also rescue a lot of dogs, and so I try to kind of lead in that way as well. And a lot to the furry animals.
Good for you.
That's really important. So yeah.
Good for you.
That's great.
Yeah. Our first dog was a rescue dog, and we will continue doing that. It's a great thing to do.
So,
I'm going to ask one quick question. I forgot to ask this before. So you said you've been the HR Human Resources, VP of Human Resources at ThompsonGas for 2 years. You came in right at COVID.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How was that transition into a new
was
role?
Tough. My entire team wasn't here, and so like starting as coming in to kind of take over a group of folks that aren't under the same roof as you was tough, right? So, but luckily we had kind of started to kind of burn the path a little bit, prior. And I just realized it was really important to make sure that I was having that individual connection with them. So we did a lot of teams conversations, a lot of group conversations, one-on-one conversations, just kind of roll up our sleeves and said, okay, like this is the way of the world now. We're going to have to make it happen. But there is always that fear, that fear that they're not going to really truly get to know who I am, but by not being kind of with me and living and breathing with me. So I really just kind of worked to kind of be an open book, and to be really transparent, and just to kind of get to know folks on a personal level before I kind of came in and started really talking about business, if that makes sense. So, but it was tough. And then, certainly the company was going through a lot, and, being someone that was coming in with a new perspective, as well, kind of trying to kind of figure out how we kind of weave our employees through that, and are we doing the right things to support them? And we adjusted some stuff and had a lot of great support from leadership to make sure we were providing for employees as they were kind of, trying to handle this madness of a pandemic that we were in.
Perfect.
So.
Yeah, I feel like you have so much
my
more
gosh,
video
yes.
time, but it's easy to lose that kind of authenticity when you have, you're on your screen, yes, but there's a million things happening around you, and not for anybody's, ill intention, but it's easy
Very
to get
easy.
distracted
Yeah.
rather than walking down the hall and, sitting and having a cup of coffee with somebody to work
Yep,
through
yeah.
a project or an issue.
I remember yelling at my kids prior to COVID. They're Snapchatting and sending text messages. I'm like, you ever just like walk over to your friend's house and say hi to them? Like go, like say hi, like look in their face. And then COVID hits, and I'm like, wow, we just molded right into the millennials like era of everything's done with video now. It's so bizarre.
But I will say, now that folks are starting to come back into the office, I've noticed that people are still in a habit, even though we're in the office together, to like Teams call. And so I'm really trying to push that, right? Like, just get up. I mean, they're actually here. Go talk to them, Yeah. I'm really trying to push that. So I'm like always walking the halls to try to talk to people and like encourage, like, they'll message me. I'll say, well, are you here? Yes. Okay, well, I'm coming over, So we do have to try to kind of get back to that too. So,
yeah. It's an interesting dynamic shift. Now our kids are back in school full time. My husband's at his office. So now I work from home, and I have pretty much always worked from home. I travel a lot, but it's so quiet. It's so quiet. Yeah. Oh, where is everybody? Nobody's popping in to say hi. And it's a major shift that we've had.
Your mailman is your best friend.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. I see like the landscaping people come through from the township. I'm like, hi guys.
I know. When we were home for COVID, I mean, I felt like there were always people walking outside because people were just trying to get out of their house, right? Yeah, there was so much activity in the neighborhood, as crazy as that sounds. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. And now it's, like no man's land.
That's fun.
Well, do we want to get into our rapid questions?
I think so. These are the fun questions.
Yeah.
Well, get antsy. Like, here we go.
Yeah, brace yourself for the rapid fire question. So we really just anything that comes to mind. It's meant to be fun. But we're also in the market for a new name for the rapid fire question. So we're open. We're open for suggestions. But all right, the first question, which I love, and I cannot take credit for coming up with it. But what do you keep in the trunk of your car?
My trunk's a mess. Honestly, but what I always say is, if I ever got stuck somewhere, I would have enough clothes to get me through any season that I might be stuck in. So there's a lot in my trunk. Yeah,
that's great. That is great.
Just luggage.
Yeah, I don't have any food.
I have water. You're good to go.
Shoes and like clothes that I'm thrown in there, and just stuff that like you toss in and you never take out, type of thing. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's fun.
That is fun. So I really like this one. If you could go back in time and talk to your 16-year-old self, what would you say?
You know what I'd say? You're on the right track and you're good enough, and it's all going to work out. Yeah.
I like that.
That's awesome. If we could all go back and say that, right? Think
of
the
16,
hours we would save. Yes. Okay, what about, how would you describe your perfect vacation?
So I am a foodie. So I think, and I love wine. So I think my perfect vacation would be in Italy, just going restaurant to restaurant, eating amazing food, drinking great wine, eating lots of bread, and just trying to live like the Italians do. That would be great.
I'm in. Let's book it.
Yeah.
I would do that any old time. Yeah, that sounds great. Great.
Awesome. What is the best advice you have ever gotten?
Probably from my mom. And so my mom was a single mom and worked really, really hard, was a very successful businesswoman, but she put a lot into that. Early in my life, she said, the time that I put in is time that I'll never get back with you guys. So work hard, but you need to know when to take time for you and when to take time for your family, because you won't get that back. And I've lived by that, honestly. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
that is great.
That is great advice
That's
that
right.
a lot of
Yeah.
people should hear. All right, our last question. What would you be doing if you were not
Oh my
in the
goodness.
propane
Okay, well, if
industry?
I was not in propane or HR, I would, I think I would have like a doggy daycare or a dog walking business, and I would just surround myself with furry friends that love me all day long, and just be happy with the dogs. Yeah.
I love it.
Great. Yep.
Yep.
I
That
love
is
that.
great.
Wouldn't that be
Oh, I
great if
know.
you could really do that?
Just
Maybe
Yeah.
there's a
hang
time
Well, I'll
out
tell
when
you,
with
we
my
do
pets.
dogs go to the
propane.
doggy daycare.
Yeah.
I know.
It's quite a business, right? So I think I can actually make money on it too, but I would love what I was doing, right? So
Yeah.
yes.
Right.
It's amazing what people do with their
Right.
dogs these
Those
days.
places
That's
seem
great.
great. We sent our dog to a place once, but she does terrible with overnight places. But they asked if we wanted a
Oh
book
my
read to
gosh,
her
I
at
love
night.
it.
I was like, wow.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe
that's what
I'll
I'm
come
saying.
and stay.
Give me a big cozy dog bed and a book
Can I-
at night. I'm happy. Yeah.
Oh,
Mind if I
yeah.
zoom
Yeah,
into this and
absolutely.
listen in?
Yeah, it's amazing. So yeah, I think I would do something like that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. We
Mhm.
come up with everything. I think that we wrapped up all our questions. I would
Yeah.
say, because we were given this advice, is there anything else you would want to offer up to the listeners to share about your
Yeah,
perspective on
I think
leadership?
again, like I would reiterate that, leadership, again, isn't something that it is just with the senior executives of your company or people managers at your company, right? Every single person is a leader every day. You have the influence to impact others, to make a difference, and to lead every day in what you do, right? So just remember, like leadership is something that you don't have to be promoted into. It's something that you can live and breathe every day. So I think that's just really important.
That's great advice. That is absolutely great
That's awesome.
advice. I really like
Sure.
that. Thank you for sharing that.
Good.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining our podcast. It was a lot of fun. We had some great questions, and
Yeah. Thanks.
thank
It was
you
a pleasure,
again.
guys. I appreciate it.
This has been another episode of Through the Leadership Lens presented by Women in Propane. Be sure to subscribe, download, and share with a friend. To learn more about Women in Propane, visit us on Facebook, Instagram, or online at www.womeninpropane.org. I'm Freddie Riddler.
And I'm Bridget Kidd. Thanks for listening. Until next time.